Good evening.
Good evening.
We close our eyes and we remember, I stand at the door and knock. We are not saying this, we are not declaring this, we are hearing this. This is something the Master, the Christ, the Spirit of God, is uttering to us. The Christ that promised, before Abraham was, I am, and I will be with you unto the end of the world. I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. This Christ, this presence of God, Spirit of God, is standing at the door of our consciousness and knocking. I, it says to us, the Christ of God, the Spirit of God, the Son of God, stand at the door of your consciousness and knock for admittance. Actually, it is not merely stating this to you and me. Actually, the Christ is standing at the door of human consciousness. All human consciousness. Christian, Hebrew, Hindu, Taoist, Vedantist, Occidental, Oriental. It is standing at the door of all human consciousness, knocking for admittance. When it finally gains admittance, the kingdom of heaven will have come to earth. Why? Because human consciousness will have been transformed. And here's what will happen. We, individually, on behalf of all human consciousness, hear the voice say, I stand at the door and knock. And we say, not merely for ourselves, but for all human consciousness, enter. Enter, Lord. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. And then we, on behalf of all human consciousness, we listen for the still small voice. And as the consciousness of Christ Jesus, this voice uttered into human consciousness, which did not receive it, but still utters into human consciousness, I am come that you might have life, and that you might have life more abundantly. I in the midst of you am mighty. Look unto me. Cease ye from man whose breath is in his nostrils. Do not put your faith in princes. The people of old placed their faith in horses and chariots and weapons, and they are lost. Therefore, no longer put your faith in horses and chariots and weapons, in golden calves, golden dollars, golden guineas. Let me abide in you. Now that you have admitted me into your consciousness, let me abide in you. And I will be your bread and meat and wine and water. I will be the resurrection even unto your sinful or diseased or dead bodies. I will restore the lost years of the locust. I will comfort you. I will go before you to make the crooked places straight, to prepare mansions for you. And I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee. All of this time, we who have admitted the Christ, the Spirit of God, consciously into our consciousness, realizing the meaning of these scriptural passages, we say, now I understand why the Master said, I have meat the world knows not of. I have the hidden manna. This I which you have admitted into your consciousness, which was at one moment standing at the door and knocking for admittance, and which in the next moment in your contemplation and meditation you admitted, you now realize is in the midst of you, performing its function of providing you with life abundant, life eternal. I am life eternal. And now, your whole vision has changed. Because now, instead of looking outside to man whose breath is in his nostril, instead of putting your faith in princes, those in high power, instead of looking to others, instead of putting your faith in material means and measures, in material sources and resources, now, secretly and sacredly, you live the inner life, which is always singing a song inside of your breast. I have meat the world knows not of. I have meat ye know not of. I have hidden manna. Look unto me. Let my will be done in thee, and my peace give I unto thee. Not as the world giveth. It's a different kind of peace. A spiritual peace. I cannot tell you the nature of it except that when you receive it, you never again fear what mortal man can do to me. You never again fear what human circumstances or conditions can do to me. You do not even fear what death can do, since not even life or death can separate me from the life and the love and the grace of God. I do not fear what mortal man can do to me. I do not fear what mortal circumstances or conditions can do unto me. Thou couldst have no power over me, because of the I, the Father within me. There is no power in heaven or on earth greater than I am. I, in the midst of thee, am the mighty power. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper if I am consciously realized within you. If you abide in the truth that I am in the midst of you, if you abide in the truth that I am the bread and the immortality of your being, no weapon that is formed against thee can prosper. No evil of this world can come nigh thy dwelling place if you abide consciously in the realization of my presence, my peace, my grace within you. If you are disturbed outwardly or by anything or anyone in the outer, retire into my peace within you. If anything seems lacking in the outer, retire into the my grace within you. For remember, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. Abide in the presence of that I that you have admitted into your consciousness. For remember, all that God has, this I within you has. All. God neither gives nor withholds. For I in the midst of you am God, and all that I have is thine. And now, on other occasions, you will discover that the Greeks who had learned this lesson from Egypt knew the secret of true identity. For they said that when you know thyself, you will know God. And so in this experience, you have known yourself and found that I am God. I, that very I which I am, that very I is God. I in the midst of me. And so you have known the nature now of thyself, you've known the nature of God, and you've known why the Master taught, I and the Father are one. One thing remains, because for centuries you have been mistaught that the statement I and the Father are one applied to only one man on earth. You have set yourself apart, whereas the Master was not revealing that he was set apart, for he clearly stated, I of my own self can do nothing. If I speak of myself, I bear witness to a lie. So when he said, I and the Father are one, he was speaking of your Father and of my Father. And he was revealing a spiritual, universal principle that I and my Father are one throughout all ages, all men everywhere. I and the Father are one. And so, this that has revealed itself to you in your contemplative meditation regarding the I that stood at the door and knocked, and the I which you admitted and which then proclaimed to you its message and its mission, you have discovered to be both God and me in one. For I and the Father are one, universally. When Jesus uttered this, he revealed the true identity of Father and Son for all people. And when it is now again revealed by Joel, he is again revealing that he has been shown the identity of God and individual man as one. And therefore, when he says, I and the Father are one, he is referring to himself, to you, to the atheists, the Protestants, the Catholics, the Hebrews, the Vedantists, and all who may ever exist, past, present, or future. I and the Father are one is a universal relationship that was established in the beginning. The relationship has never actually been broken. And if you wonder why we have wandered into a world of so much troubles, you need only return to the story of the prodigal son. The relationship between his father and himself never was broken. The father was the father and the son was the son. The son merely turned his head away from the father and ignored him as if there were no such relationship. But that didn't break the relationship. It just deprived him temporarily of the benefits of the relationship. And when he awakened, then he realized, I and the Father are still one. And so he beheld the Father rushing out to meet him. Of course, they had never been separated or divided, because there is no way of breaking the relationship of parent and child. There have been many parents who disinherited their children, but they really never broke the relationship of father and son or mother and son. That is a relationship that cannot be broken. It has been proven in spiritual experiences that even where parents tried to disinherit their children or child and deprive them of financial inheritance, that the child was able to regain their heritage. Because actually, a parent cannot succeed with that if the child knows the spiritual truth of the indissoluble nature of parent and child. Now, when all of this is known, without having once mentioned the word prayer, you discover the meaning and the nature of prayer, because all we have been doing is praying. This whole period we have been praying, knowing the truth that makes us free. Prayer is not petition. Prayer is not affirmation. Prayer is the recognition of our relationship, our unbreakable relationship with our source. There is no need to ask for anything, because the nature of this I or God is omniscience. We never need to use it as a power, for there is no other power. It is omnipotence. We never have to become good to get it or go somewhere to get it, because it is omnipresence. Here where I am, whether I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, whether I make my bed in hell, whether I am the woman taken in adultery or the thief on the cross, Omnipresence is omnipresence. And my recognition of omnipresence is prayer. My recognition of omniscience is prayer. My recognition of omnipotence is prayer. My recognition of the fact, then, that the weapons of the world represent the arm of flesh is prayer. For then we do not have to fight weapons, germs, diseases, depressions. We have to abide, live, and move in the recognition of our true identity. And so we come to meanings of heretofore unknown terms and words. Dr. Steinmetz, early in the century, said that in this century the nature of spiritual power would be revealed. And it is. The nature of spiritual power is non-power or grace. We are not under the law, but under grace. We are not under the law of good matter or bad matter. We are not under the law of a lot of matter or a little matter. We are not under the law of great powers or lesser powers. We are not under the law of a God power and a devil power. We are just not under any law once we have come into the recognition of our true identity, of that I in the midst of us, for now we are under grace. Now, our harmony, our peace, our joy, our success, our prosperity is ours not by might, not by power, but by my word, grace, by Spirit, grace, the gift of God. But the key there is not by might, nor by power. And remember, this means also not by mental might as well as not by physical might. Not only you do not earn your living by the sweat of your brow, but neither do you accomplish it by taking thought. For who by taking thought can add 1 cubit to a stature or change 1 white hair into black? So we do not live by physical power or mental power, but by grace, the gift of God. And that, you see, puts us as living in a constant state of receptivity, a continuous state of receptivity, always listening for the word. And this should make clear to you the Master's statement, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Therefore, once we have learned to live in a contemplative meditation, in an attitude of "Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth," once we have learned to live in an attitude of listening, we receive the Word. That makes no difference whether you receive it audibly or not. You do receive the Word as you abide in this listening attitude, and then that Word goes out before you and becomes the bread, the meat, the wine, the water. That becomes your inventions, your discoveries, your science, your art, your literature, your music. But you see, out here there can be no science, no art, no literature, no music, unless it comes first through consciousness, through inspiration. Through inspiration, we receive these melodies. We receive this literature, the spiritual truth, the natural discoveries of science. All of this must come to us through consciousness, through the Word. As it does, it externalizes itself out here. In the same way that as I have received this message of the infinite way, that Word has externalized itself out here as books, as students to read the books and hear the message. All of this first had to come through consciousness, then consciousness had to appear out here. And so if you wonder how you got here, just remember that the Word drew you. You came to hear, to receive the Word that came through as this message. Now, it was only because something in you was reaching for the Word that it in turn led you here to receive it. Of your own accord, you could no more have come here than the other 250,000 people out in the city. They haven't found their way here. And in all other cities the same way, only 100 or 200 or 500 find their way. And I didn't send for them or for you, but the Spirit that you were listening to, the guidance that you were seeking for spiritual development, this, in many different ways, has resulted in your being here. So therefore, it had to be the Word received in your consciousness that resulted in your being here. And the Word being received in my consciousness is responsible for my being here, and the books being here, and so forth. So it is then that as you develop a way of life, I call it the mystical way of life, the way of withinness, the way of listening, the way of receptivity. As you develop that, as you learn on waking in the morning, never even to get out of bed. Don't stir until you've consciously opened your ears. Whether or not anything comes makes no difference. Then get up and attend to your physical duties, preparations for the day. But before leaving home, be sure that again you tune in. You do not wish to live as a branch of a tree that is cut off, that withers and dies. If you are going to live as a branch of a tree, at least be a branch of a tree that is connected to the tree, and acknowledge it by turning within to the trunk of the tree and then listening for the message that comes up from the roots, or through the roots, which has been brought into it from all of its surroundings. So you will see then, there is a vast lesson to be learned, and I think it's exemplified in our pamphlet, I Am the Vine, and in the book, Living the Infinite Way, so that you do recognize that if you were one of these electric fixtures up here, that unless you were connected with a center, and through that center all the way out into the source of electricity for this community, that as a bulb you couldn't shine. Only by virtue of that oneness can the bulb be lighted. Only because of our oneness with our source can we be the light of the world. I am the light of the world. But if I am, it is not by virtue of myself, for I of myself can do nothing, and if I speak of myself, I bear witness to a lie. But because of my oneness, I the Father and I the Son is one. God the Father and God the Son is one. Because of that oneness, I am the light of the world. And therefore, the bulb can be lighted, or the branch of a tree can bear fruit. Of itself, you know better. Only by virtue of its connection with the tree and with the roots, and through the roots, with everything that's in the soil, and the sunshine, and the snow, and the rain that falls on it, all drawn into the earth and up through the roots. So with us, my conscious oneness with God constitutes my oneness with all spiritual being and idea. And by virtue of my oneness with God, I am one with you. And by virtue of your oneness with God, you have been led here to hear the Word. But remember, you have been led here to hear the Word for only one reason. Not that you may ever be attached to me, not that you should ever have to be concerned about me, only that you may hear this message of your true identity, so that forever after you may abide in that. And as you make your daily conscious contact with it, your teacher will have served his or her purpose. The books will have served their purpose. Then, if you find yourself out in the middle of the ocean with a rubber boat, you will be rescued. If you find yourself adrift in the desert, you will be rescued. If you are sent into the midst of war, you will be rescued. Why? By virtue of your conscious realization of your identity, and that I have hidden manna, hidden grace, hidden meat, hidden protection. Therefore no evil can come nigh my dwelling place. No weapon that is formed against the human mind can find its target in me. Not by power, no, by the conscious realization of grace. Not by taking thought, by conscious realization that because I have been given my peace, my kingdom, my grace, I live by grace. Now, we have revealed the truth of your identity and mine, and of our friends and relatives and enemies. There remains but one instruction to make this complete. As we walk this universe, abiding in the truth that I and the Father are one, and that all that the Father hath is mine, and I am living by grace, remember that you do not complete your demonstration unless you are recognizing this truth about me, about each other, about every human being in the world, the good ones and the bad ones, those of the past, the present, and those yet unborn. In other words, you must begin a practice until it becomes second nature, that everyone you meet, you must silently, sacredly, and secretly see the eye over their head. Do not be concerned about looking at them as male or female, young or old, rich or poor, high or low. You may have to come into awareness of that later, but be sure on your first impact with anyone that you watch and remember that eye that's knocking at the door of their consciousness, and which temporarily you may place over their head, but later you will recognize to be within them their true identity. But just for the purpose of recognition, be sure that either you instantly remember this eye, or look into their eyes and see it looking out through their eyes. Now, to understand this properly, when you go home, look in a mirror and look at yourself from head to foot and agree that this that you are seeing is not you, that this that you are seeing is your body. And then you say, then, but where am I? Well, I'm looking out at me. This is the secret. What you see in the mirror is not you. It is your body. You are looking out through your eyes into the mirror. Therefore, you are invisible. Now, don't go to sleep tonight until you have learned this lesson, that you are invisible. No one has ever seen you, not even your mother. They have seen your body, but not you. Not you. You are invisible, and that is why each one of you, if you were to tell the truth, would admit that you have never yet met anyone who really knows you. No one who really understands you. And that's the truth. Not one of you has ever met anyone who fully understands you or fully knows you, because you are not on the surface. And what is on the surface is not all there is of you. You are never showing all of yourself to husband or wife or parent or child. There is always an area of your consciousness which you do not show the world. And if there are some of you who haven't discovered that fact, you will soon discover it, that there is a hidden part of you which you do not reveal to this world. Now, look again in that mirror and be sure of this, that what you're seeing there is not you, it's your form. But I am looking out. Now, when you have completed that tonight, please remember that when you awaken tomorrow, that you must remember that behind every form you meet, there is a person, an individual, which is an individualization of God. The life of God, the mind of God, the soul of God, the Spirit of God, called I. I call me I, and you call you I. Each one of us has I. And that I is the I that is one with the Father. Therefore it is spiritual and perfect, regardless of what our sins of the flesh may have been, or sins of the mind may have been. I am intact, sinless and pure. And therefore, you will not complete your demonstration of harmony in life until you have sought out and discovered the I of every individual, saint and sinner, friend and foe, recognized it and acknowledged it. And for this reason the Master gave it to us. Praying for your friends profiteth you nothing. To be sons of God, you must pray for your enemies. And so it is. If you want to pray for your friends, for your relatives, and for your enemies, there can only be one form of prayer. Recognize the true identity of I that looks out through their eyes, even as you recognize the true identity of I myself, which is looking out at you. You see, the only way in which I love my neighbor as myself, the only way in which I love you, is not in any charity or benevolence or favor that I might do you, which is so trivial. But the only way in which I can really express the love of God to you is by recognizing the I that sits behind your eyes, the I which is yourself, which is one with God. And therefore, whether the appearance of you at this moment is sick or well, young or old, rich or poor, is of no matter to me. What is of matter to me is, I know thee who thou art. Thou art I, the Holy One of Israel. Now, I am loving my neighbor, my friendly neighbor, if he likes to call himself so, my enemy neighbor. But you'll discover the enemy will not be the enemy very long after you have recognized I looking out of their eyes. The I that I am, the I that thou art, the one I, the divine self, the Holy One of Israel. Know thyself, and you will know God. But don't forget to know me too as God, or the circle is not complete. It is never complete as long as we are praying only, as long as we are beholding only the Christhood of our own friends, of our own relatives, of our own nationals. When prayer is understood through knowing the nature of God, the nature of the I, you will then begin to understand spiritual power, and you will know that it is not something we use. It is something that uses us. No man can use spiritual power any more than any man can use God. God is not a servant of man. We are servants of the Most High. Spiritual power is not something we use to benefit ourselves or others whom we would like to benefit. Spiritual power is something that uses us so that it may flow and reach human consciousness. This can only be understood as you understand the nature of this I which has come that you might have life eternal, and that you may have it not by might nor by power, but by grace. One more thing. God, the real God, the true God, the I that is within me, needs no human assistance or human advice, no human orders or pleas or commands. The God, the one true God, is omniscience, the all-knowing, and needs not to be told anything by man. The God, the I at the center of our being, is omnipotence. It does not fight other powers. It does not have to be used against other powers. Because of omnipotence, there are no other powers. The God, the one true God, which I am, does not have to be sought. We do not have to go to holy mountains or holy temples for it. It is omnipresence where I am. And therefore, once we have recognized these three facets of the nature of God, we learn to rest in God and let the God that created the universe maintain it and sustain it. Let the God that is our Father maintain us and sustain us, govern us, which it cannot do if we are not listening. Therefore, our function in life, in order to be God-governed, our function must be a listening function, a knowing the truth function. Once we know this truth of the nature of God and abide in that, spiritual power, through grace, lives our life, provides for it, gives us our particular talents, fulfills them, goes before us, is our protection, and all without taking thought, abiding in, recognizing. My peace give I unto thee doesn't mean you have to do anything to attain my peace, except be receptive to it. Do you see what a life of prayer is? What a life of silence means? Listening. And do you see the reason for secrecy, for sacredness? It isn't that we would have any secrets from the world. Heaven knows you know how wonderful it would be if only 100,000 people were here tonight to hear this message. How we would love it. But since they cannot receive it, we must wait for them to come. until they ask for it. Then we can share it with them. It's a secret way of life, sacred way of life, but not one in which we have secrets. It's the secret that we gladly share with those who are ready for it, receptive to it, responsive to it.